father that we had the same father. And as further verification, I also am the father of twins. So I don't know what that means. What an opportunity to share a platform with one of my all-time conservation heroes, Congressman Dingell. I had Congressman Dingell on my radio show for about 8 straight days, talking about the importance of the Clean Water Restoration Act, which very frankly does nothing more than take us back to what the Clean Water Act did before the U.S. Supreme Court changed things. And as I've often jokingly said to my friends, that's exactly what happens when you take a bunch of old lawyers and give them black robes. Okay. I fish and I hunt and I vote. And I vote conservation and always have. I am a lifelong Teddy Roosevelt Republican. And I'm still a Republican. But here I am in Denver for the Democratic National Convention. And it's been an exciting day. Thank you. I'm not running for anything. I really aren't. Probably be running from Republicans when I get home. But I had a little bit of experience in the Republican Party. I served as a press secretary to former Governor Frank L. Farrar, who, after I was his press secretary for 2 years, became the first Republican in South Dakota history to not win re-election. Which tells you what kind of a press secretary I must have been. Conservation and hunting and fishing are near and dear to my heart. I was lucky enough to be the son of 2 parents who really cared about the outdoors, and I identified really seriously with Senator Lincoln when she talked about the influence of her father. My father was much the same. He farmed, and he fished, and he hunted. And he was very proud of what our neighbors referred to as dirty fields, because he got even with them in the fall, because our farm was where they all came to hunt. Because Dad was as proud of the ringnecks and the sharp-tailed grouse and the Hungarian partridge that were the benefits of his farming practices as he was wheat, barley, corn, cattle, and other livestock. And my mother was the angler in the family. Boy, no, I've never met anyone that loved fishing more than my mom, and I'm going to tell you a very quick anecdote about my mother and how much she loved it. We grew up in the prairies of North Dakota, and today North Dakota is a fishing destination. It was not when I was a kid growing up. The most glamorous fish we had were bullheads, and we used to spend every Saturday and every Sunday on a neighbor's stock dam called Danielson's Dam, which is, we called it that because Danielson's owned it, but we're always willing to let us fish in it, and we'd fish all day Saturday till well after dark on Saturday night, and then Sunday came along, and my dad was a farmer, but like many farmers even today, he held another job in town. He was a driver for the Railway Express, which in a sense was the forerunner of what we know of today as the UPS and FedEx. And he went to work on Monday mornings at 5 o'clock. His shift started, which meant he had to get out of bed at least by 4. And every Sunday night, because we were on the western edge of a time zone, it'd be past 11 o'clock, and he'd look at a stringer of maybe 80 or 100 bullheads that he'd have to clean before he could get to bed. And he'd turn to my mother and he'd say, "Marion, don't you think we've had enough fishing for one weekend?" And invariably, every time he said that, she'd say, "Shh, I'm getting a bite." And we'd be out of there by midnight and sometimes 1 a.m. But I treasure those moments because my mother instilled in me a love for fishing. My dad instilled in me a love for the outdoors. And at the same time taught me as a very young boy how important it was to leave things for wildlife. And as a fisherman and a hunter and an angler, I look at leadership in America as one of the major problems we face because the last 8 years for all the things I care about have not been good years. And I don't have to tell anyone that. We all know it, Republican and Democrat. And as Larry said at the outset, you know, it's popular to paint all sportsmen with the same brush and think we're all a bunch of beer-swilling nuts on guns. And I own my share of guns. I don't apologize to anyone for that. But at the same time, I don't subscribe to the sometimes vitriolic and angry rhetoric that comes from the far right, and particularly one gun organization. I guess that's maybe why I like Ray Shanky so much with American Hunters and Shooters. Ray, incidentally, is a former tackle. I kind of lost where he went, but he was a former offensive tackle for the Washington Redskins. And if you ever played football, particularly in the line, and somebody gave you a dirty lick, you always had an opportunity to get back at them on the next play. And I sure wouldn't want to be playing opposite Ray Shanky. But in any event, the things that concern me most in determining who's going to get my vote this fall probably center around the development of real energy policy, a bold energy policy that addresses the problems we have. And first and foremost is global warming. I have spent a lot of time on my radio shows and the columns I write for a few newspapers in the Dakotas addressing the subject of global warming. And I have tried to talk with every expert I can find. I talked with Trout Unlimited fisheries biologists, and they tell me what I guess I didn't want to hear, that the two species of fish most apt to suffer from increasing temperatures are trout and salmon. And here we are, right in the heart of some of the best fly fishing country on the face of the earth. And the trout, unless we address this problem, are going to have a very difficult time. I'm also an avid waterfowl hunter, and I live along the Missouri River right in the center of South Dakota, in an area that Ducks Unlimited magazine, once in one of their trivia contests, said, you know you're a real waterfowl hunter when your idea of a great weekend is A, a weekend in New York City, B, a weekend in Los Angeles, or C, a weekend in Pierce, South Dakota, which is where I live. And we are well known across the nation for quality waterfowling. But man, over the past 10 years, I have seen so many significant changes in waterfowl. Historically, I could always count on having huntable populations of ducks and Canada geese, along with white fronts, by the 1st of October. Over the last 5 to 6 years, I've not seen virtually any significant numbers of ducks or a lot of geese until the end of January. So that's changing. One other thing, observation I have is Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Probably the perch capital of the world for winter perch fishing. I used to go there the opening weekend or actually Thanksgiving weekend. The last few years, I haven't been able to find firm enough ice to walk on Devil's Lake until late January. That's how much global warming is changing. And I think if you look at your own experiences, you can probably see examples of global warming wherever you live. And I believe that's going to be a challenge for the next president and the next president's administration. And when I see the next candidate come out with bold ideas about giving us good, renewable, clean energy, that's the person that's going to get my vote. And have you all seen those clean coal things that they're passing around all over town? If anybody knows when the start date of clean coal is, would you please let me know? My time is up. Thank you very much for your attention.